Hello. So we are back with my mother, Jill.
After a long respite.
So first of all, we apologize, guys, for taking such a long break between Mom's stories on her Penny Pension Mama series. But, you know, we had Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we had several birthdays in that time. And then we're chronically ill, guys. We can't do this all at once. We can't even do this all in a year. And so, you know, life happens, car accidents happen. So we are back, and Mom's great wisdom and words of inspiration shall abound again.
Next time I give you advice, you listen to these words that you're saying and eat me.
Anyway, so I don't even know where we stopped. Do you know where we stopped, Mom?
Yeah.
So, okay, go for it.
We were doing the car accidents, and it was very depressing where we stopped last because we were doing the car wreck and the dog getting run over and all those types of things. And I hope
those really fun, encouraging times.
Uplifting things, I know.
And it just gets better from there, doesn't it?
Actually, I hope today's will be a little more uplifting than last time's was, although we still have some interesting things happening, needless to say. But I was going to talk, well, first of all, before we start, I know a lot of people wonder, why didn't God just come down, zap things, help me win the lottery, get me a big inheritance and that type of thing. And it doesn't work like that all the time. It's like with little kids. When they're learning to walk, they have to stumble and fall in order to get their legs going and strengthened to learn how to do it. They're in a little bubble. They only have the surrounding area that they can kind of crawl in, that type of thing. And unless they learn to stand up, walk, and once in a while scrape their knees, they won't learn to have the freedom to go every place, much to Mom's dismay. Once they start walking, they're everywhere. But God has to do that with us. They have to sometimes scrape their knee a little bit in order to get up again and keep trying. And that's just the way life is. That's just the way we learn and we grow and we get, better. And God does us just like we do our children. We can't carry them around on a pillow all their lives. That would, what would happen if everybody just carried their
I'll tell you what would happen. This generation is what's happened. Because that's exactly what's happened with all these spoiled kids, and now they expect everything.
Yeah. And so you have all this whole gamut of emotional garbage and physical stuff that they can't function. And so this is just God's way of helping us to become better people, to learn to help others more, just the whole gamut of things. So that's why He allows a lot of things in our lives for us to grow. Another thing, often it's not God's fault. People want to always blame this stuff on God. I get so frustrated because it wasn't
It's never God's fault. It's never God's fault.
No, it's not. It was Eve that ate the apple that God said, don't do that. If you eat that, you're going to hurt yourself. Things are going to be bad. But she did it anyway, and Satan egged her on. And between the two of them, and then you throw Adam in the mix, and you have this big, huge mess, So a lot of times the things that happen are stuff that either we do ourselves because God said, don't do this. God says, don't have sex outside of marriage. Oh, aren't you glad I'm starting out with sex first thing?
Gonna wake us right up.
I couldn't think of a better example. But there's a reason He says that. You don't get sexually transmitted diseases. You don't have pregnancies out of wedlock so that children have only one parent to try to take care of them. He designed it so two parents would take care of this child for it to grow and learn. And there's so many other complications with that it hurts it. It hurts women emotionally when this happens, and all kinds of different things. We rant and rave about women's rights, but something like that is so simple. It takes so much away from a woman when something like this happens.
You want your women's rights, but you don't want your women's responsibility, and it's your responsibility to not get pregnant if you're going to be doing that stuff.
Exactly. There's so many things that we do like this. We don't pay our bills thinking it's not going to hurt anybody and that type of thing. And I'll get into that in a little bit more. But, it's stuff we do wrong sometimes that God said don't do this, and we do it anyway.
Well, and a great example is buying things when you don't have cash. Buying that big screen TV.
That's what I was going to get into, in a little bit.
So,
talk about how you do stuff. And not only do we do things ourselves, but sometimes you say, well, I didn't do anything. Sometimes it's other people doing things that cause us to be hurt, and we get the consequences. And I'll get into that a little bit later on, showing something that Dad kind of did, to show those consequences.
You haven't already proven that?
Yeah, I know with the past videos, it's given fact, isn't it? But today I'm going to show you a lot of the jobs I did, and how it was so interesting because each job kind of got dropped in my lap in a way. I never went out and job hunted. They just always seemed to come to me. But each one of the jobs I took, it worked out in the future I needed that job for something I was going to need in the future. Each one. And there were always people in these jobs that I needed that were going to come to my rescue in a way further down the line. And I'm always fascinated now looking back on it, how if I hadn't gone step by step the way God wanted me to go, I wouldn't have had these people in my life to help me later on, like when we got sick and different things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and that's why I wanted to do these jobs, to explain to people what a difference you think they're just little unimportant things, but they're big important things when God has them, lined up for you. So at this point, I'm doing the player piano business. I'm building parts in our home. My husband left. I've got the 2 kids, and so to support us, I'm building the piano parts for player pianos, Nickelodeons, Calliopes, that type of thing, in my home. It's manufacturing, and that's what I'm doing. I'm doing pretty good on the business. I was bringing money in, but I wasn't setting the world on fire, especially because I had so much debt that I kept chunking the money into. We were really living only about $350 at this point still.
So do you remember how much debt you had?
It was, at this point, I think it was $35,000.
Yep. And that included the house, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Dad had been gone at this point for about 3 years.
Excuse me just a minute. The house was only $10,000 of that, though.
Yeah.
And because it's been a while since we've done this, that debt was not debt that you incurred.
No, none of it was mine.
But you ended up stuck with it.
I didn't even have the results of the debt. In other words, sometimes you have a debt and you have a beautiful house, and you may not have, your husband may have done it, but you still have a beautiful house or a nice car. I didn't even have any of that.
Yeah, Dad just went out and spent it all. And left you, because your name was on the credit cards, and left you with all the $25,000 of debt and credit cards and bills, and then $10,000 on the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll get into in a little bit why I didn't declare bankruptcy and that type of thing on this. But anyway, so I'm barely, it's doing good. And people have to realize the minimum wage back then was like $4.50. So that translates that debt into maybe $90,000, $80,000, something like that nowadays. So this was a huge chunk of money back then. So I'm just eking along, and I'm exhausted because I'm putting in, about 50, 60 hours of work, about, just depending on the month, like a usual, your own business, it has its up and down. And I was working 6 days a week, and my friend, I didn't have any support system, none whatsoever, but I had one friend that I'd met in a job that I'd had before I started the business. Just this one gal, that's all I had. And I wasn't super close to her. It wasn't like we were bosom buddies, but I kept in touch. She called me and she said, let's go to the women's fair. And she said, I'll treat, but you need to, I hadn't done anything social. 3 years, I'd done nothing social, pretty much.
Because we had no church, basically, at this point. Our church was turned their backs on us.
Went to church every Sunday.
But we didn't.
But we didn't do the social stuff because people were kind of shunned us. Yeah, and no family. We'd moved back, and I didn't know any of the neighbors. Zero support system. No, nothing. And because I worked at home, I had no co-workers, nothing like that. But she was the only one, so I said, all right. She said, you need to do something. So I went, it was on Sunday, and I went ahead after church and went with her. Now we got there, and there was a whole bunch of gals doing Mary Kay facials. And she said, let's go do a facial. It didn't cost anything, so I said, okay, we'll do a facial. You've got to realize at this point in my life, I had acne so bad. I mean, extremely bad. And I had suffered from acne since pre-puberty. I mean, nothing would go away. And I'm not going to get into that a whole lot right now because when we do the makeup video, I'll touch more on that. So this facial was kind of exciting for me to get to because I was so self-conscious about my face and that. And when she did it, it felt really good. And she said, can I come and do one at your house for free? And I knew good and well this was sales ploy, that she was wanting to sell me product. And I said, I don't think it would be worth your time because I cannot buy any of this stuff. It's great and wonderful, but I can't buy it. She said, that's fine. Just let me come and do the facial. And I had been suckered in enough that I was very cautious about these things. But I said, all right. She couldn't get me in for 3 weeks. So she gave me all these samples to use until she came to do the facial. Well, wouldn't you know it, the silly samples worked? I mean, by the end of 3 weeks, my face had almost totally cleared up. I could not believe the results. I was so excited for the first time in my life. And she came and did the facial, and she said, would you like to go ahead and buy some of the product? And I said, no. I said, I saw the prices. I had a heart attack. I said, I just can't. This was more than groceries for, a couple of weeks for us, for one little thing. And I said, no. She said, well, have you ever thought about selling it? Oh, yeah, I'm going to be a salesperson. That's going to happen. I was such an introvert. There's no way I want to do sales. She kept saying, well, you can get the product for almost nothing if you sell it. And she kept talking to me, and I'm thinking, oh, I looked so good. I couldn't believe it. I know that sounds conceited, but if you'd suffer
Mom has low self-esteem.
Well, if you'd suffer with acne as long as I did, it was just like,
yeah.
And it was so tempting to spend that money. I mean, it really was. But I said, I can't do it. She said, well, why don't you sell it? And I said, well, I can't. And she said, you could just sell it to your family members and friends. Well, I didn't have any. And I had nobody to sell it to, but I said, okay, what do I have to do? She said, well, first of all, you've got to buy a kit for $65. Then you have to buy $150 worth of product. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, right, this is going to happen. I don't have $20 to buy the little makeup, let alone $200 to start selling. I said, no. I said, that cinches it. I can't. And they didn't do this. This was why this was a little bit odd, because none of the other reps did this, or gals did this. She said, I'm going to buy your kit for you, and you don't have to pay me back, the $65 kit. And she said, you can use all of my product, whatever you need, until you get yours up and going and can start affording to buy your own. She said, this way it will cost you nothing, absolutely nothing to start up. I thought, oh my, you talk about leading me into temptation. And I said, all right, I had nothing to lose, absolutely nothing to lose. Well, I did it, and the business took off. I was doing facials right and left, going to people's houses.
So where did you find the people if you didn't have any friends or family?
No, it was kind of, she helped me with a couple of her clients. She gave me a couple of her clients to start out with, and that's kind of where I just slowly started going from there. They would recommend me, and then somebody else would recommend me. It was more like word of mouth. A lot of my business has always been word of mouth. And so that's how I just slowly started going, but it was actually picking up. But I was really, between doing the piano parts, I'd get up, put my overalls, my flannel shirt on, work in the workshop, and then come home and put hose heels, do my makeup and nails, and run and do a facial. And I was just circling.
Because you were still doing the piano business, too.
Oh, yeah. That was
my
full-time job. The Mary Kay was just a little side venture, so I'm up to at least minimum 60 hours. a week at this point working. So I thought something has to change. I can't keep doing this. I was just insane. So this is where I always tell you to put pen to paper. When something's not working, if your finances are out of whack, don't just think in your head, well, how can I fix this? What can I do? Actually write down the numbers. And I got to thinking, I spent 20 minutes packing up product to put in the car. Then I spent another 20 minutes driving to the people's house to do a facial. When I got there, I spent 20 minutes, and I was writing all this down. 20 minutes packing up product to put it back in the car, and another 20 minutes going home. There's an hour and 20 minutes. And I was doing minimum 5 facials a week. Actually, I was doing more than that, but a minimum of 5 facials. So let's just say it was an hour. That's 5 hours I wasted packing up product and driving. So I'm sitting here thinking, how can I do this different? And I thought, and I was doing that. I looked up and I had a whole big dining room that we never used for anything. And I had a table in it, and I had all my product on shelves in there stored. And I thought, why don't I have them come to my house? That would save the packing up and that save the trip. I'll just have them come to my house. Well, the higher up people said, no, you can't do that. They don't want to come to your house. That's too much trouble. You have to go to their place. And so I made up my mind, either they came to my house or I couldn't do it anymore. It was just that simple. So I started having people come to my house, and I could shut the doors off too between the dining room and the rest of the house, so that I didn't have to clean the house or anything when they came. It was really easy when the kids destroyed it, back in the back. And so they started coming to my house. They loved it. I lived right downtown Wichita, in the very center. A lot of them worked there. They started coming to my house on their lunch break for a quick facial. And they'd see all the product displayed. Before, I could just take a little bit with me in the car, but this way they saw everything. So they wanted to buy everything they saw, and they were starting to buy the stuff. They started bringing their co-workers on their lunch break, and I was doing facials after work. They would pop by, and if they were going out for the evening, I would do, a facial, and it was on fire. I was really going like crazy, and I had 5 extra hours plus a week more that I could work either doing that or doing the piano parts. And I'm telling you this part because I heard a man once say he was like the richest man. I wish I could remember his name. I had brain fog this morning and I can't. But he was like the richest man in the world, or in the top 5 richest men. And he's always asked, what's your secret? What's the secret to your success? And he said, I never do anything the way everybody else does it. If they're doing something, I do it totally the opposite, completely the opposite. And I did the opposite of what everybody else was doing. And I want you to think out of the box. If it's not working for you, whether it's cleaning your house, if everybody on the internet says this is how you have to get organized and clean your house, but it's not working for you, do something different. Sit down and think, what's the exact problem here? And what can I do to change it then? Write it down. And so we watch the internet and we see all these cool ideas, and this and that and the other, and we do it and we get frustrated because it's not working for us. I don't do a lot of stuff that's on the internet because it's not successful for me. So start doing things differently. Don't just sit in the same squirrel cage going round and around and around. If you're having problems with getting organized, sit down and say, what is causing this? I do my laundry. If you do your laundry in the morning, you're not getting your laundry done, it's always piles of laundry. Think, maybe it would be better if I do the laundry in the afternoon when I'm not trying to get the kids off to school or the lunches packed. Think of different ways to readjust, everything in your life. Why am I not getting my bills paid? Is it because I forget they're over there? I don't remember them? Think these actions through to help you.
So if my 5 kids are mucking up my house, does that mean I need to get rid of them then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wait, do the opposite. Aren't you being smart? So anyway, I was doing pretty good with that. Of course, I'm a sucker for punishment. And the preacher's wife came up to me and she said, would you be interested in a part-time job? As if I'm not working long enough hours, but I was wanting to get these bills paid off. And I said, well, I quit working before because I wanted to be at home for you guys, but 3.5 years have passed now. You guys, you were starting high school, and things had settled down with Dad. We'd accepted the fact he was gone emotionally and things like that. So I thought, well, maybe I could take a part-time job. This job was really good because I didn't go to work until after you guys left for school, and I was home long before you got home from school. So, and also I could take off pretty much for the full day or take off the day if I needed to, because the pastor's wife and I would cover for each other, and it wasn't a big deal. And I can see you're trying not to yawn. Go ahead and yawn.
Sorry. I just sat down. When I sit down, I start yawning.
I know.
I'm not yawning, and you're my mother-in-law.
Oh, that's a compliment.
So anyway, I said, all right. And it was a receptionist job, and I figured I had trained as an operator, with AT&T, so I thought this will be easy to throw this extra 4 hours in every day, no problem. I tell you, this was the hardest job, most stressful job I have ever had. I get to work, and
what's the job?
Well, what it was, I had a 6-trunk phone line. In other words, 6 phone lines coming in that I had to answer. There was 135 people, agents, insurance agents in this building that I had to transfer those to. The little kicker here was it was a claims office. So 90% of the calls I got were people who were livid. I mean, why are they not taking care of my claims? I should be getting this. Or, I just had a car wreck and I don't know what to do, and my husband's on. And I was the first person they talked to. And I had these people that were absolutely hysterical. And I have all these trunks lighting up, all these lights flashing at me, that phones I had to answer and get them through. So I'd say, I'm just the receptionist. What's your agent's extension? I don't know what his extension is. Okay, do you know his name? Yeah, his name is John. It's John. Okay, they've given me this list of 135 people in alphabetical order by the last name, and I'm supposed to go through it, getting this person calm, try to go through and try to find a John on this 3 pages list. And all the time, 5 more lights are flashing at me, and I'm thinking, this is insane. I mean, it was really crazy. And I said, just a moment, ma'am, let me look and see if I can find a John. Well, then they get more upset because I'm not, instantly transferring their call, and they keep spewing more of their story. It was like, are you kidding me? What did I get myself into? At the end of 2 weeks, I was tearing my hair out, because people don't realize when you're talking to somebody and they give you your name, half the time you don't remember their last name, unless you've practiced doing this purposely. But you don't remember, you have a hard time remembering their first name. If you're emotionally distraught, you don't remember anything. So this is the type of thing I'm dealing with. They don't remember anything. So after 2 weeks, I went to my boss. I said, is there any way I can put this list in alphabetical order with the first names instead of the last names? Because everybody always knows the first names. He looked at me and said, no, you can't do that. Nobody alphabetizes by the first name. Have you guys ever heard of anybody alphabetizing by first names? It's always the last name. That's the way everybody does it. I mean, let's face it. The world is totally flat, is what they told everybody. You can't sail a ship around the world because it's flat. You just go off the edge, type of thing. And he said, no, that wouldn't work for you. Well, I'm afraid I went ahead and took the list home, and I rewrote it. I thought, okay, we'll keep this list for them, but I'm going to have this list for me. And I rewrote it, and we didn't have computers back then. I had to hand do all this list.
Yeah, you couldn't just hit sort by first letter.
It took me all evening to get these all organized. But
and of course, you didn't get paid for doing that.
No, I didn't. But I went back the next day, And I actually answered the calls twice as fast. Was able to take twice as many calls. I was pulling those calls in. It worked beautifully. You'd be surprised because there were only 3 names that had doubles for a first name.
Wow.
I know. See, nobody thought that, and nobody would have bothered to try to do it. But I thought it had nothing. Anything could be better than what I was doing. There was only 2 Johns, 2 Susans, and 2 Kathys. I mean, that's otherwise everybody's first name was different. So I was ripping through these people. They said, "Well, John said that I needed this." I said, "That's fine, ma'am. Let me just transfer you over to John," and click. I would get him over right away. And so it just changed my whole life doing that because there was no more stress. The clients were happier because I was answering the stuff faster. And the gals that relieved me on my break, I wasn't allowed a 15-minute break, but I could run and go potty if I had to. But the other secretaries in that had to relieve me for the 5 minutes that I was gone doing that, and they hated it. They dreaded me picking them to do that because of that silly list and nobody knowing the names. They were so excited that first day after I did the names that way. They just couldn't believe how much easier it was. So I'm telling you this story. The moral of the story is, once again, if it's not working for you, change it. And just because everybody else does it doesn't mean you have to do it this way. I think we put this story in the book. It's about
Which book?
Dining on a Dime. I'm not sure. I think we put it in Dining, that this woman baked a ham every Easter.
Oh, we didn't put it in there, but yeah.
And so she baked this ham, and she would cut the ham in 2 and put it in 2 separate pans. Okay, she had to cut this silly ham in 2, it was a mess. Then she had 2 pans to clean up every dinner afterwards when she'd do this on Easter. Her friend said, "Why in the world do you always cut this silly ham in 2 and put it in 2 pans? Why don't you just put it in 1 big pan?" And the gal said, "Well, I don't know. My mom always did it this way." So she asked her mom, "Why did you cut the ham in 2? And her mom said, "Well, Grandma always did it this way." So she went to Grandma and said, "Grandma, why did you cut this ham in 2 every Easter and put it in 2 pans?" And the grandma said, "Well, when I first got married, I only had 2 little pans. I didn't have 1 big pan. So I'd always cut it in 2. And we do so many things in our lives. It's just because somebody else has done this way for years.
Which goes into, we put our kids in soccer because everybody else has put their kids in soccer.
That's the point.
We go to do the whatever. I don't know what women do because I don't do what everybody else does. But we go out to eat with lunch with all our coworkers because that's what all of them do. Heaven forbid you sit at your cubicle and eat your lunch by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought that, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. It goes into so many areas of your life that it affects.
And you would not believe, well, you believe it because I tell you every day I get one, but people would not believe the amount of emails and comments we get about how abusive we are because we don't allow our kids to do all these extracurricular activities.
Well, even more, I've talked to some of our kids' friends. And I say, "Wow, yeah, you do a lot of baseball. Do you love baseball?" And they're like, "I like it okay. Well, my mom likes it. My mom likes me in it.
My
Or
dad wants me
likes
to
me
do
in
it."
Good point.
And I think so mom and dad are saying, "Oh, we're pulling our hair out, taking little Billy to baseball." Billy's saying, "I'm doing it because they want me to."
Yeah. I saw a whole program where they talked to the kids separate from the parents, and the kids said, "Well, I'm just doing it because my folks want me to."
Yeah, like
and
our
the
kids
parents are being stressed, and the kids are being stressed.
And it does not make your kids better kids. I am proof of that now, and I can say that now. I
am proof of that.
I have 3 teenagers that I have raised from birth, plus an additional one. But the 3 that I have raised from birth were never in a lot of activities. We did karate once, and we did gymnastic once, and piano lessons once. That's all I think we've done. And
they haven't really asked to be in much.
Yeah, and we let the kids decide what they wanted to be in. But it's very interesting. Wow. So let's see. They're well behaved. They're not nasty to other people. They don't expect to have everything because I made them buy their own cell phones. Because everyone buys their kid a cell phone because heaven forbid you walk 3 blocks to school and somebody might mug you.
They're independent and responsible too.
Yeah.
Well, and what you don't know too is BJ, your oldest, who's 19, going to be 20 this year. You should hear him talk, and he's saying the same stuff you're saying. He said, "Why are people doing this?" And he doesn't feel like he's missed out on anything. As a matter of fact, he's almost proud of the fact of how well adjusted he is.
Well, really, until 20 or 30 years ago, kids didn't all play in football, and they didn't all play sports, and they didn't all go ice skating and honor society and everything else.
Yeah, and even like with you guys, kids seem to love to come over to the house to just play with you after school.
Well,
our
kids had no one to play with in the neighborhood because all the kids were gone.
Yeah.
Doing stuff all the time.
But what was funny is, there was a time where our kids were being invited to birthday parties, and they were big, elaborate, extravagant $500 to $1,000 birthday parties. And we had a birthday party at our house, and we thought, we're not going to spend that much. And we came up with activities and plans for them. And all they wanted to do, when they got there, we had a big yard. All they wanted to do was run around the yard, get on the swing set and on the tire swing. And it had nothing to do with all that stuff that people think they need to do because little Susie's going to be warped for life.
They don't realize kids just want to play and be kids. That's in their nature, just to be social with other little kids, just to play.
And they were telling us this is the best birthday party I've ever been to. And I'm thinking, yeah, don't tell the person who spent $1,000 for you to be entertained for an hour and a half.
And then the parents get mad at the kids when the kids are stressed out at these birthday parties and they don't have fun.
Well, it was the same thing. I used to work for PBS, and we would get free tickets to all those shows that people pay like $75 a ticket for. And there would be parents there we'd have our kids with the free ticket, and they would say, "Oh, I want to go play with the water fountain, or wander around, or climb up and down on something." And I was thinking, wow, you could do this not in this venue. But then there were other parents, and they were getting really angry with their kids.
They were screaming at their kids.
Because they spent $75 on the ticket, and then they spent $20 on a balloon, and $20 on a snack, and $7 on a small cup of a drink. And the parent is completely going over their heads and spending on this, and the kid doesn't care. And then my parent gets mad at the kid, but the kid didn't make the decision to spend all that money.
Yeah, and that's part of the stress, that people don't realize money and getting more money and spending more money. They don't realize they have this stress in their life. And I keep saying this attitude towards money causes stress in your family, and that's what you're talking about.
Well, you yell at your kids because you feel pressured by other people.
Exactly.
And those other people are feeling pressured by you. Everybody's doing it for no reason.
Yeah.
Well, and couples always say, well, I wish I had a good relationship like you and Mike. Well, Mike and I, our relationship isn't perfect by any means, but...
Okay, I'm hurt now.
But we don't sit and argue over money every day. We've maybe had 3 money arguments in our whole marriage because we don't have that stress.
You have time to spend a little bit of time with each other, because you aren't taking your kids to activities all the time.
We also don't overwhelm ourselves with activities either.
Yeah. You personally, you don't do social stuff, a whole lot that's overwhelming.
So sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that.
Yeah. So people don't understand that that's where the stress we talk about, that's part of the stress we talk about, that money has to do with the kids and everything.
And that's where you're bringing it on yourself. That's not God doing it.
No.
That's you doing it to yourself.
No, and then you lose your job and you've got all this mess and you think, well, why did you allow me to lose my job? And I'll look at here, I can't handle my finances.
Well, that's when people want to be their own God. They say, I'm not going to pay attention to you, God, right now because I've got this under control. But then when they dig themselves into a mess, they're like, God, why did you let that happen? Like he said, well,
they are depending on their money and they're depending on their job. They're not depending on God. That's what they're doing. You need to learn to depend on God and not depend on that job and that money.
Well,
you
and
really
when you
do.
say I've got it until you're underwater, he's saying, well, you said you had it, so I'm just letting you take it.
No. So you've got to really rethink. That's what I'm talking about, rethinking your situation. And maybe there's something else involved than just needing to get more money in. There might be another way you can change your situation than working 25. Here I'm talking about working in more jobs too.
Yeah, but you were a single parent and that's not the kind of situations we're talking about. We realize there are always exceptions.
So please don't email us about your 1,001 exceptions. This is
people say we're being judgmental. I get this all the time. Well, you're being judgmental. Maybe their family got them their iPhone. We are not talking about those kinds of people. And you don't. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mother. I have to say this. Don't comment and don't email me how we're being judgmental, because 95% of these people are not getting their phones from their family, and don't tell me they are.
Well, what happens is people don't want to face the people that are saying that to you or to us. They don't want to face the reality of their situation, and they want to blame it or make an excuse, and they're the ones that they are the exception, and they pick up the exception because that way they don't have to face it.
They don't want to face the responsibility. They don't want the responsibility.
By using that excuse or picking out that exception, they can make an excuse, that we're wrong, and they don't have to look at the fact that maybe they're not doing something quite right with their finances. They don't have to face up to it. So I'm trucking along. Okay. Dad had been gone about 3.5 years. I'm getting really excited here. I figured that if I had 6 months, I would get, with all these 3 jobs, I had been just going for it. I figured I would have all the loans paid off. 6 months was all I had, and I was just, you can imagine there was light at the end of the tunnel finally, after working at the insurance company.
And to put this in perspective, we figured when we first wrote the books as to why we're experts in this field, you were earning about $1,000 a month between all these jobs.
Yeah, is what I was earning. And so I was getting really excited. And it was December, like the 7th, it was into the first week of December, and Dad comes over. And he says, I've got a letter I need you to read. And I read it, and it was from the IRS. Now, up to this point, after this 3.5 years, I'd made sure all of our finances were separate. We weren't divorced,
I didn't afford a divorce.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I didn't have the money to do it. It cost about $500. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the energy or even the time to try to deal with any of that. But I had made sure that we had no bills in our name together. We had no cars, there was nothing. We had of course, I didn't even have credit cards, but there was nothing connected with our name. I'd been filing my own tax returns for over 3 years now. And the only one thing we had was the house. Well, in 6 months, I was going to have the silly thing paid off. So I'm thinking I'm not going to take the money and the time to try to switch it over to my name, because when I get it paid off, we'll just, put it in my name and call it good. And so he shows me this paper from the IRS, and they said if by December 31st, which was in about 3 weeks, if he didn't give them $10,000, the 1st of January, they were going to take the house. That meant our home would be gone. That meant the main income was a piano business, and that was going to be gone. And so once again, I'm in a situation where I'm going to lose everything, over $10,000. I couldn't get a loan. We had no credit cards where you go pull it off an ATM or, get $3,000 from this credit card, $3,000. I couldn't do any of that.
We had no credit cards, period.
No, nothing. And then I had this loan still that wasn't paid off, and any collateral I had was still hooked up with that loan. And, that was not a good situation, that whole thing. Even though I was paying it off, it was really there was no bank that was going to say, okay, I'll give you a loan, and they look at my past history. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Of course, Dad didn't even, I mean, it was given he wasn't going to pay it because he wasn't going to lose anything. We were the ones that were going to lose the house.
He already wasn't losing things for what you were having to pay off.
Yeah. And so it was not, he felt bad about it, but
he didn't feel bad enough to do anything about it.
Exactly. So I said, well, let's go to the bank and see I didn't know what else to do. And I really wasn't, it was odd. I was not panicked. I didn't feel any panic. I was pretty calm about it. At this point in my life, I'd had so many weird, disastrous things like this happen. God had helped me out. I'd learned to, if I can't fix it, to stay calm. Although in the future video, you're going to find that didn't always work, but for that day it was working. And so I was staying pretty calm, and we went to the banker. The banker took Dad in and talked to him first. I don't know why he did it this way. And then he took me in. And he said, first of all, there's no way I can give you a conventional loan. Just to do the paperwork and to put it through all the stuff they had to run it through and everything, it was 30 days. I had like 21 days.
Because, of course, Dad didn't bring the paper over the day he got it.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to say that earlier. I knew good and well he'd had that for a while, and he didn't want to face me with it. So he procrastinated, of course, like a lot of people that are in debt do. They procrastinate, think if they put it off, it's going to make it better, but it just made it so much worse. And so he said, there's no way I can give you a conventional loan because it just won't go through in time. And he said, on top of that, you would not get it. He said, you don't have, there's just no way you can get it with all this other debt. And he looked at me, he said, but I will, if your husband's not involved in it at all. He said, I will give you a signature loan. I didn't know what that was for sure. Bottom line was, he said, I'm giving you $10,000 on your word of honor and your handshake that you're going to pay it back. All right, now, I want you to get the full concept. If you walked into a bank right now,
no way.
Would the banker give you $10,000 on your word of honor? It was no different back then. It really wasn't. I mean, he was still a banker just like they are nowadays. And he said, I will give you $10,000 if you promise me you'll pay it back. There were two things working here. First of all, of course, God was right there in the middle of it. My hands were tied. He softened this banker's heart. And it was like God was, and I don't always feel this all the times when these things happen, but what came to mind at the time, it was like God said, this is your reward. You have faithfully trusted me. You have faithfully obeyed me, even against unbelievable odds. And I do reward my children when they do that. And he said, you have come to me, you have not been worried, panicky, afraid, nothing. When you found out about this, you immediately trusted me. And I'm showing you, because you did that, you don't have to worry about these things. God shows me over and over again, why are you worried about this? Because he showed me that I could trust him. And he was thanking me, rewarding me, saying, you picked up your bedroom, so now we're going to go get an ice cream because you did what I asked you to do, and you deserve a reward for this. So that was one thing. The second thing, and I don't, this is going to sound conceited, and I don't want it to, but the banker trusted me. He absolutely trusted me because in times past, in the past few years, I kept my word. If I said I was going to pay something, I paid it, and I paid it on time. I was never late with my bills. Not one bill was I late. I was never late with any payments. Not only that, I paid way more than the minimum amount. I went way over. He knew me well enough to know that we were sacrificing. I wasn't taking that 10,000 and buying a car and then saying, well, I can't make the payment on this year time, or whatever. I wasn't being irresponsible, losing my bills in a massive mess on my desk. And I was the type of person that if I was going to be there, if I said I'm going to be there at a certain time, boom, I was always there. If I was going to do this, I did it. I followed through.
When you got your tax refund, you paid your bills. You didn't go out and buy a big screen TV.
Exactly. I went to church on Sunday, but through the rest of the week, you didn't hear me using God's name in vain. You didn't hear me shaking my fist at God because somebody pulled over in front of me in traffic. I had integrity at that time. Well, I still do.
You still do.
But, you have to work at that. It wasn't easy. There were times I didn't want to pay my bill on time. I wanted to take it to get something else. There were times I didn't want to show up on time. I didn't want to follow through. And integrity takes a lot of work. I was responsible. It takes work. And it was like you were talking with the kids, teaching the kids to be responsible and integrity and by different things. And for the first time in all my 35 plus years, I'd done this for years and years. My folks had taught me to do the right thing, to be honorable, and to be responsible, and to have integrity. They worked at teaching me this. And it helped me. This helped me that day. If I hadn't had that, I probably wouldn't have gotten alone. I'm sure God would have figured out something, but God wouldn't have honored that, because if you're not doing these honorable things, we think God honors us because we do these mega things, going to church on Sunday, we have these mega ministries, or we teach Sunday school. No, he honors us because we keep our word.
Well, and the little things, it specifically says, if you're not going to take care of the little things, I'm not going to give you the big things.
That's good. Yeah, exactly. And so I couldn't believe it. I got that $10,000 on just my word of honor. Now, the downside of that was my 6 months, I'm now having to pay $10,000 more off. So here's this debt still extending.
And Dad did not pay any of that.
No, he did not. And I left that day realizing that was the turning point where I thought, I am going to have to get $500 and go ahead and get the divorce proceedings started, just for our financial protection. I just had to get it totally separated. I just kind of put it off because I didn't have the money. But I made the decision. Now, it took a little while for it to all go through, for me to gather up enough money, but I made the decision to definitely start doing something that day. On top of that...
And that's one of the things. Make the decision to start. People get stuck in these situations. I don't care if you're living homeless in your car. If you make the decision, I am going to have a home with my children and someday we are not going to be living in the car.
Yeah.
You can start propelling yourself forward.
Yeah, to do it. And one thing too, I want to mention, don't judge, my husband. Don't judge that, I don't want people judging him. The first thing is, what a jerk was he, to do that, because he didn't pay any back. But before you judge him, I want you to think about yourself. Are you declaring bankruptcy because you've got a fancier car than you should have had, a bigger house than you should have had, because you're spending more than you should? Are you declaring bankruptcy? Are you getting your car repossessed because you're not making the payment? Are you not paying your bills?
Are you not paying your child support?
Not paying your child support. Are you doing all these things? Are you not, I'm just going to let them take that back and I won't bother to pay for it?
Well, even if it's not financial, are you not doing something you should be doing?
Yes.
That's hurting
true.
Other people.
But the thing is, what I don't think we realize, you look at, my husband and say, what a jerk he was, because you guys had to pay for all this. You declare bankruptcy and you think, well, that's just companies. It's no skin off their back. It's okay to do that. Nobody's getting hurt by me declaring bankruptcy. That's so wrong. those companies are going to get that money somehow. So they take and raise the price on their products. When they raise their price on the products, I have to pay more for that same product. You have to pay more. Everybody has to pay more on that product because you declared bankruptcy. So now we're getting hurt because you're irresponsible. You get that car repossessed. Car companies raise the prices on the cars. And so I have to pay more for a car. Other people have to pay more. Don't think these things somewhere down the line, you're hurting somebody.
And you're going to hurt yourself eventually.
Yeah. And so you can't judge my husband for this because you're doing the exact same thing in a different way. So be careful in this, judging. We were so lax about, if I can't pay it, so what? If I can't pay it, so what? And we've got to get over that mindset. It's terrible. So at this point, Dad went, he didn't pay anything back, but the house was not finished being remodeled. And we'd been in it 15 years. Stuff were really starting to break down again, what we had remodeled. So he did, I have to give him credit, he worked really hard for several months fixing things in the house because he felt guilty, he felt guilty. And so he was killing himself trying to get the house, doing as many repairs and things that he did. Now, then as soon as he got that stuff done, he moved to another state. And that drastically changed things for us because the little tiny bit of support I had was from him still, just moral support, if something happened to you guys. It hurt you guys because he'd promised he wasn't going to leave till you were out of high school and you were starting your first year of high school. And David wasn't even high school, and here he broke his word and left and moved out of state. And that was starting of the deterioration of your relationship even more downhill at that point. I think we'll stop here because things really got a little bit worse after this.
A little bit,
possible. And really started going downhill. But I think we'll leave that for the next video and the other jobs that I got.
So here's the cliffhanger. So you won't believe what happens next. Is that good?
Yep.
Still laughing, so it must not have been too bad, guys. No, not really.
All right, visit us at Living on a Dime. Please subscribe, like, share, give us thumbs up if you guys love Mom Video, because then it shows it to more people. And we will see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye-bye.